I hope you had a wonderful evening last night. It was great to see so many of the leaders of e-commerce and digital marketing in this room, in the corridor here, and to see the exchanges that are happening. It's fantastic. My name is Marc Fischli. I lead the EMEA business for Criteo, and I have the pleasure today to talk to you about something that we don't often talk about in digital advertising, and that is joy. The joy of discovery and the joy of the consumer to have a fantastic shopping trip. I had, in the eons of time, the pleasure of working for Guinness, an iconic brand who's always been super proud to deliver humorful, joyful, funny ads that people really liked and were waiting for. They've done this really well in all formats, in all sort of touch points they had with the consumer. And they lived, what you can see on the left-hand side, in a world that was driven by curiosity in advertising, about excitement, about the joy of exploration, seeing something new, some unexpected finds. Maybe in this world, if you ask people, they will tell you that we're more living in the right-hand side of this slide. We have become very predictable, precision and efficiency. We've had the data revolution. We've had the AI revolution, which is still going on. So with that, we've become very efficient. Our CFOs are more and more happy because we can show them what we do as marketers and how it delivers return on their investment. But maybe we have become a bit transactional, and maybe we have become a bit boring. So at Criteo, we wanted to know whether this hypothesis had anything to do with what consumers actually feel. So we went out and we did a large survey. We've had a survey of over 7,000 people globally, consumers, and we've asked them questions about the shopping trip and what they felt happy about and what they wanted more of. I'm going to present a few insights around from this research. That report will be available. It will come out in 3 weeks' time or so. It will be available to all of you who have scanned in and directly, and then afterwards more broadly. There's loads of other things in there, but there are some interesting findings about how consumers feel about the shopper journey. I'm going to present to you a couple of main hypotheses or insights with a few data points to make you start thinking, right? And we'll see about what then my panel will think about some of those ideas. The first insight is online shopping is efficient, but not joyful anymore. And consumers actually don't really want this. They want this to change. So that's the hypothesis. Let's see what the data tell us, right? So here's a few data points for you. To start with, consumers find it difficult to have unexpected finds in the shopper journey, because the shopper journey is super relevant and it's very efficient. You see exactly the things that you're searching for, but that discovery piece is maybe less present. 36% of shoppers say it's difficult to find something really new or something unexpected. Efficiency remains important, right? Is 63% of our consumers still say they want an efficient shopper journey, right? It's important for them to not to spend, enormous amount of time on the shopper journey. So it's important, but it's obviously maybe not quite enough, because what you can see on the left-hand side here is 76% of consumers say that the shopper journey is unexcited, right? Unexciting. It lacks that surprise and delight that they had lived in previous times, right? And even more worryingly, nearly a third of shoppers say online shopping is a chore. So there's clearly something we need to think about more broadly than the efficiency piece, right? So we can debate that in a bit more detail in a minute. So that's the first insight or hypothesis. Let me talk about a second hypothesis, and this is more about brands' desire to have a connection, ideally an emotional connection as well, with consumers. The hypothesis reads, brands are not making a lasting impact. Shoppers today struggle to feel the connection they seek in the digital retail journey. So for brands, clearly something that we need to think about more deeply, because that direct link is, of course, linked to things like loyalty as well and brand loyalty. There's been a lot of discussions recently how consumers have become less and less loyal to brands or to different channels. They jump around on their shopping journey from one to the next. Having said that, there has been some recent investments back into loyalty from retailers and from brands, adapted to the modern shopper journey. So not quite as, you earn something today and then you get something back in the distant future. So much more immediate reward, so back to the here and now and the always-on shopper journey, and to get that surprise and delight piece a little bit back into the journey. But that's my interpretation. Let's just look at what the data actually tells us about, emotional connections for shoppers. Right. The first thing to say is that brands get the best connection to shoppers when they're close to their consumer. Not rocket science, really, but it's important to stay close. So we have 37% of consumers that tell us they feel most connected to the brands when they're on the actual brand's website. So not on the retailer's website or a third-party website, but on the actual brand's website. So there's something around that which we should keep in mind as marketers. Interestingly, only 23% say they feel connected to the brand if they're on an influencer website. We talked a lot about influencers, and we keep talking about them in recent times. But maybe what we're seeing here is the consumers feel quite connected to the influencer, but maybe not so much to the brands that the influencer happens to talk about, right? So how do we get that balance right? It's one thing we should think about. Social remains very, very important. So, and that goes mainly into like positive reviews. If you get positive reviews on your brand, that increases consumers' connection to your brand. And 74% of consumers say positive reviews contribute towards that. The personal touch is also and remains important. 76% of our consumers are talking about how a good customer service or direct interaction with the brand, with a human, adds to their positive shopper journey. So there's clearly, again, a balance that we would need to do, which make these things interesting. 43% of shoppers say they want a relevant experience with a brand. And note, it says relevance and experience. So relevance, we're doing pretty well as an industry. Experience, we can probably do still a little bit more. Interestingly, consumers also tell us that, or about 50% of consumers that told us that they know that the more data they give us access to, the more relevant afterwards their experience will be. So that trade-off is finally starting to get known well by consumers. But look, in summary, there are some pros and some cons here for our brands when they want to seek that emotional connection to consumers. But the numbers are still relatively low, right? So we can definitely do more and try to sort of look at how we get into a more all-encompassing shopper journey with great connections along the funnel. So these are my two hypotheses with a few data points that I've given to you. So, the shopper journey has become a bit joyless, right? And therefore, we need to make sure that the emotional connections that brands have, we need to work more hard on it. So I have a fantastic panel today here with me to discuss about these and give you their opinion of what they think about the two hypotheses that I put out there. And can I please ask to the stage Duke Tanson, who's Chief Digital Officer of Glamira, and Christian Majgaard, who is former Global Head of Brands and Business Development at Lego. Please, gentlemen. Right, gents, so I put some slightly provocative thoughts out there, maybe. What do you guys think? Has the shopping journey become joyless, Duke?
I agree. I think the stats kind of proves that. But I guess the question is, how did we get here? And what are the key kind of parameters that are driving that? And I've got 3 points that covers those kind of 3 key areas. One is what you alluded to earlier on, which is about the efficiency drive. I think brands these days are focused on the short-term KPIs and the short-term metrics, and so everything is about here and now. How do we get a sale currently now? And so we're focused on the short-term measures. And because of that, everything has become quite monotonous and spontaneous, and there isn't enough that we're doing from the customer excitement standpoint. And so the efficiency piece is kind of driving that behavior. The second element to all of these is also kind of about the use of data So we have a lot of data about customers, first-party, third-party data, and the use of AI is making recommendations quite efficient, but those recommendations are quite, I would say, probably lame in a sense that it's based on what we know about the customer, and so what we're giving the customers is pretty much what they already know. It's nothing exciting about it, and there's actually research in the Journal of Consumer Psychology that talks about the filter bubble, in a sense that what we're giving customers is very, very predictable and not joyful. Now the final one, it's kind of around choice, where there is the hypothesis that the more choice we give customers when they land on our e-commerce website, the better. But actually, choice can be overwhelming. And what then it leads to is decision paralysis and purchase abandonment. So I think those are the three key things that are kind of driving that.
Great, thank you. Christian, what do you think?
I entirely agree to what you said. I spent some part of my youth, which you realize is many years ago, on IMD up here in Lausanne in Switzerland, the business school. And they have made over the years quite profound studies of the essence of customer innovation, customer experience innovation. Many countries, many brands, many categories. They always come to the conclusion that this is simply paramount in the entire marketing mix is to keep innovating the customer experience. And that then means not only product, not only brand, but certainly also online. It's a total package. They always come to that conclusion. And I must say also, I doubt that my old company, Lego, would ever have reached what they reached if it wasn't because they are so excellent in creating an emotional customer experience.
Great. Let me stay with you, Christian. So as we tend to agree, at least on this panel, that we have something to work about, what concrete steps do you think should the industry start to undertake?
Oh boy, there are many. I have a long list here. Now I'll see how many of them I'm going to bore you with today. This is the document I stole in my hotel this morning. Not that I hadn't prepared myself a little bit more. First of all, I think we should agree what we mean with emotional experiences, because it's a many-worded monster. And of course, it doesn't matter whether we agree here, but it's in your businesses at home that you find out, what do you mean with joy? What do you mean with discovery? What do you mean with excitement? And to that, I also think of getting rid of hidden negative emotions, sometimes unconscious negative emotions. If you can get rid of those, that in itself is a lift in the emotional part of the customer experience. I have an example from our Legoland parks. We used to, and this still happens, track the customer satisfaction. You always do that. In the old days, it was interviews. Now it's online. The whole thing is that these numbers sort of tend to be very stable and boring. They look nice. What do you think about the food, the cleanliness of the park, the toilets, the parking, and what have you? And one day we agreed this is getting too boring, so it wasn't so much the customer experience, it was the interviews. We said, now let's discover the emotional side of this. And we agreed that we should use observation, which that's what you have. Remember that if you want to understand emotion, you cannot always do it by interviewing people. You have to observe. So we started observing people, also private friends. We told them afterwards that we had observed them. But what we found out, for instance, we had some examples where a mother with 2 children comes home from Legoland, she slams her legs in the sofa and says, I never do it again. And imagine, this is the same customer who has filled in and said, oh yeah, the toilets were nice, the food was nice. Now we met the subconscious part of her. And we found out the problem is it is very stressful to visit a park. If you have 2 children, you are afraid they run away. And it's hard to agree a pace. Whenever you try that, if you go shopping on the street, if you have 5 friends, you're always disturbed because you don't have the same pace. This is the same with the family. The kids want more play, and dad wants an extra Guinness. And how do you do that? And that insight really helps us. So that is that is one thing. And that brings me to the next. We should widen our understanding of the customer. Of course, when we work with online shopping, we must, and we do understand the customer as a shopper. But there are two other lives which we should understand us. It is the customer as a consumer and the customer as a life. And both rationally and emotionally, that makes 6 windows. That really helps. I know you still work with online shopping, but there's a lot of inspiration to pick up in the other windows if you get hold of them. Then I think it matters to be in sync with the brand. If you work with emotional stuff, you can easily get into the sphere, the personality of the brand you work for, but you can also come out. And if you come out, it doesn't work. Here's an example from France. It's not new, it's old now, but it's still fun because it's so stupid, and I take responsibility for it. We wanted to do more for our little Lego minifigure, the little man with 4 holes in the butt. And so we had a rock orchestra hold the man in the hands while they were playing. And the rock orchestra was okay, and the minifigure was also sort of okay, but it just made no sense. There was no synergy. You didn't add to the personality of the brand. You didn't add to the personality of the rock orchestra either. It was just a stupid idea. Whereas the day we took the Lego man to the Lego movie, then the synergy was there. Just as an example.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Christian. Duke, what do you think about industry steps?
I think, for me, fundamentally, we need to start moving away. Short term is important, and don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that it is not important at all, but I think we also need to think about the long term. And how does that translate into how we interact with the consumer? We need to look at bringing emotion back into our campaigns. Short term, sales and promotions, it's not going to be enough. We need to blend emotion into our campaign and focus on a long-term gain. And so that emotional connection in our campaigns is quite important. The second element is we need to introduce entertainment in our shopping. If you look at the trend TikTok is giving us these days, we're now able to see short-term video content that actually is exciting. So we're moving away from your standard studio-created content to organic content that looks real. And I think that kind of brings it a bit of a connection with the consumer as well. We're not doing enough of what offline businesses are doing, which is the surprise and delight. If we can kind of bring a lot of that surprise and delight element from the offline to the online stage, I think we'll be able to kind of drive a bit more connection with the customer. And then finally, we have AI. How can we use AI to bring joy to the customer? Imagine a scenario where you land on an e-commerce website and there's a little kind of AI icon that asks you a couple of questions, and based on the answers that you're providing, it's able to give you an experience that is unique to you as an individual. And I think for me, those are the key things. Okay,
that's great. Let me stay with you. You talked a bit about data and AI. Yeah. Data has given us a lot of the efficiency that we see today, and some consumers may say it is a little bit predictable and boring. What opportunities would you see for data? I mean, you just mentioned to give us insight into experience through data and AI. Maybe go a bit deeper on that. What could be done around that?
I think we have data, but the question that I keep asking my e-commerce folks is, do we have enough insights? Right. So there's one thing having data, and there's one thing having insights. And so the data needs to inform us and give us the insights that we need to be able to use to personalize and more almost engage with the customer. What we then need to then ask ourselves is, do we have enough information or insights that will help us drive that customer engagement? So we have the data, but let's move forward and actually start interacting with the customers and do a bit more survey to get that predictive view of that customer. We want to serve the customers now, but we want to serve the customer in the future. By serving the customer in the future, we need to have a predictive view of what we think they might need. And I think that is the next step that I believe should come into this to help our engagement with the customer.
Yeah, that's interesting. I may ask I may add an experience that I had in a previous job when I was working for the Tesco group at Humby, and we did a lot of data to insights. And so one of the things which was interesting is about the insights needed to go into logically the efficiency part, the targeting and etc. But there was quite a bit about surprise and delight, and that was done online, but also in store, and how you can make these two things link up was very interesting. Data is helpful for knowing a customer to your words, right? But if you go and push this beyond what's the so what are you going to do with that information? And I think as an industry, we probably need to double down a bit on that. Maybe Christian, anything to add on the data usage?
I can think the qualitative side of data, you can add an example. When we upgrade, I think it was after we had started the e-commerce from Lego, we did some interviews with children where we took them away from the shopping mode, but just let them sit and talk with their friends, and then the moderator gently sort of sowed the seed. What do you want from Lego's website? And that discussion gave us also data. It's just another kind of qualitative data. Yeah. And one of them was we would like to be able to buy 2,000 blue bricks. And we actually opened for that. Not necessarily that exact number, but the idea that there was more than the standard range to buy other weird things. That was open through that study, which is also data. It's just qualitative data.
Yeah, it's interesting as well for Criteo as a company that obviously has grown up with relevancy and efficiency. Well, it's the DNA originally of the company. We're quite driven by our AI colleagues in our AI lab to push us back into like all of the different parts of the shopper journey, including some of these emotional connections. So if you look at, and please feel free to go and talk to my colleagues at the Criteo stand. We have interesting developments in AI, and a lot of them are actually going into this part of more international, emotionally driven connections to the consumer. So we talked a bit about where we are. We talked a bit about some industry steps that we can do. If I now come back to the brands, maybe on the second question, a bit on that emotional connection that there was. Do you think that's something brands can manufacture, this emotional connection, or is this something that is more organic? Duke, maybe start with you.
Personally, I don't think it's a question of whether it's organic or manufactured. I think it kind of revolves around a couple of key points. You know, as brands, how well do we understand the customer and their cultural movement? And I think, you know, for me, that is important. What we need to understand is it's not just the customer on his own, it's the customer and what their belief system looks like, what they are about, what are the key things that matter to them. I think brands need to kind of focus on that a lot more. That's number one. Number 2 point is the brand itself. Are you being authentic? Are you being authentic to the values that you claim to be? And sometimes what we tend to find is, and I'm not going to put any brand on the spot here, but what you tend to find is what the brand says are their values and what they actually do is not necessarily in line. You know, I could use Boohoo as an example where I used to work previously, and you know, there was a point where there was criticism about the brand and the fast fashion world not being aligned to values. So and I think that's the key thing. Building an emotional connection is also about investing in product innovation. If you want to engage with a customer, then we need to invest in our R&D. Nike kind of fell back on that. They kind of cut back on their investment on R&D, which means that the products that they were putting out was the same. Now, if we go back to some of the research points where customers are discovering new stuff on TikTok, you want to be at the forefront of that kind of innovation and discovery. And so product innovation is also quite key. Yeah.
Christian, did Lego manufacture its emotional connection to its brand?
To a wide extent, but I agree. I much agree with what Duke said. It takes two to tango. There's an old saying goes like this: you can take the horse to the trade, but it has to drink itself. You can't drink the water for the horse. So there is two things happening here. But again, the insight. If you know how customers react to certain stimuli, then you can almost create it.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. Is there a brand out there that you admire that says, well, you're not allowed to talk about Glamira and you're not allowed to talk about Lego, but that does that really well? But Duke, maybe you can start.
Yeah, unfortunately, the example that I have, it's on Lego, Christian, if you don't mind.
I don't work there anymore.
I've got a young boy, and I think Lego has this wonderful kind of capability on their website, which they call the pick a brick tool. So effectively, what they've done is to put the customer at the heart of the end product that you're going to buy. And so you're not buying an end product, you're picking these different pieces of items, you then go away and create something that you want. And so you're almost kind of bringing the customer into the heart of the decision making. I think that's fantastic in that respect. The other thing that brands are doing is to tie the customer connection through their loyalty program. And Lego does that quite well, and they call it the Lego Insiders, where as part of their loyalty program, you know, the surprise and delight customers, you're giving access to new products before it goes to market and all of those things. And I think for me, they do that brilliantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
after that free ad, right? Like,
yeah, thank you very much.
It doesn't work there anymore, so that's okay.
I mentioned Glamira now, but I'm not allowed to. No, I think the French fashion brand Rouge, and it's spelled with a J like Juliet, not G like George, ROJE.com, is interesting because it is very brand managed all the way. It is so wholesome brand. The tone color is calm. The typefaces are absolutely specially and beautifully designed, and contrarily to a lot of fashion website or e-commerce sites, there's a lot of information, but without any clutter. The information almost flows to you when you need it. So there you can really read about traceability, the sizes, the fabric. Some of the biggest commercial fashion sites in my country, they don't mention whether it's cotton or acrylic. I think it's quite relevant. That is really a nice, also the way they show the customer that if they're sold out, it's not with an ugly red cross. It is a little nice vignette which allows you to press and say, you can be alerted when we are restocked. And that also goes with their novelty products, a new product they launched that is coming. There's a little letter dancing on the photo, so you don't leave the photo. And you push that, it means you will now be informed when the product is ready. I like that. Yeah, quite a few fashion sites, you disappear from the photo, and you disappear from the atmosphere. You stay in that beautiful, calm atmosphere.
Yeah. Both of you were talking on your examples about some interaction between the digital world and the physical world to create this consumer experience and the emotional link to consumers. How important do you think that is, if you can? Obviously not everything is a physical product. Christian, maybe starting with you. How does it help?
Yes.
Yeah.
I still believe in the cycle that even if we focus on the shopping experience, it is this three-stage cycles. They shop, they consume, they live a life, and they come back. And so a lot of the free traffic we get is really because they have been through all three parts. And that's why I strongly believe in an integrated effort.
Yep. Duke?
Yeah, I think so. But then also what we have to consider is there are pure play brands who don't have offline stores.
Sure.
And so that element is kind of missing for them. But the principles are the same. And I think we need to think about how we lift those principles and make it live on the online world. But then also going beyond the purchase, the customer journey doesn't start and end when they make a purchase. Mm-hmm. It continues from the, what do you call it, the logistics kind of engagement piece in terms of kind of your delivery and all of those things, and how you bring joy in all of those kind of elements until the product is delivered to the customer.
Take some inspiration then from other areas of marketing.
Exactly.
Look, we're coming towards the end of this, so my last question to you guys is, if you look forward, maybe for the next 12 months or so, if there's one thing that you could wish for that the industry would do, what would that be and why? Maybe Christian, if you would kick us off.
I would go down to the single e-commerce department or business, and then I think the one thing they should start doing is to sit together and make a few mini seminars about how you bring emotion into the customer experience. So I would invite people who have researched it. I would certainly invite anthropologists. I would invite some of the content creators that are already good at that. And all through that, I think ideas will come. And here's just one little advice for working with ideas. It's not enough to have 4 bad and 1 good idea. You should have 5 good ideas, so you're really pressed to find out which one of them should you go for.
Cool. Duke?
I have a view that AI is presenting the biggest opportunity that we've seen for a very, very long time. And so how do we take advantage of this AI revolution? And in my view, if I had the power, call it the genie, AI will sit on top of our e-commerce kind of engagement with the customer. AI will influence the customer interaction and be more spontaneous at the time. AI will have the capability and the power to surprise and delight based on the customer interaction. AI will offer gamification and all the kind of things that we think about, particularly in the offline world. How do we lift that and bring into the online world? And AI, I believe, has the capability to be able to help us achieve that. And so for me, that would be my bet and an investment in terms of what we do.
Fantastic. Maybe I'll add mine. I'm looking forward to a world where we take out some time to think about the things which are a bit beyond what we do in the day-to-day. It's quite easy to get bogged down on the immediate objectives that we have and etc. We all have the curiosity and the adaptability, because that's our industry, to move forward around it. Let's use it and get some inspiration from things that are maybe not in the day-to-day, and I think that will bring us forward in the next 12 months. And with that, I would like to thank my panel. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here with me, and everyone in the audience, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.